Back to the South African morning. Of course, it's about 20 minutes to go before the top of the hour. Let's move on to the story, because according to the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings, the University of Johannesburg has emerged as the leading South African university in terms of achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, these rankings acknowledge and highlight universities for their dedication and positive influence in areas such as sustainability, societal impact, as well as innovation. The rankings assess four main domains: research, stewardship, outreach, and teaching. In fact, Mametlwe Sebei from the Department of Professionals Ethics at UNISA joins us now to talk a little bit about this. Thank you so much, Mametlwe, for your time, and a very good morning to you. What exactly does it mean for higher education institutions to have such recognition, particularly in a time where a lot of contention is being placed on universities' ability to also highlight the graduates' opportunity to get jobs? So how important is this type of fate?
Well, it does say that these universities are having greater, impacts in society, particularly in terms of the things that the United Nations looks at regarding sustainability, of the world in which we live, where, of course, human activity today is causing, climate change, where, we have society where, widening inequalities are a reality, and of course, causing about social polarization and instability. So these are things that these rankings are looking at. And of course, what these rankings are saying is that these universities, in terms of research, in terms of teaching, they are contributing positively and meaningfully, of course, to society in addressing some of those issues and some of those challenges.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about innovation. I mean, the University of Johannesburg has been touted for always being ahead of the curve when it comes to innovation. 4IR realizing the actual impact of 4IR, but also putting together those implementation strategies such as robotics and artificial intelligence and the like. So they've really been held quite high on how they've introduced such 4IR related skills as well as subject matters. Are we seeing other institutions of higher learning following suit, or are we still lacking behind in terms of introducing new forms of innovation, especially when it comes to the digital economy?
Well, I think what this ranking is saying is that South African, public higher education is not really far behind, right? It could do better, and I think this is what this report is telling us. It is saying to us that, of course, number of institutions are showing the potential, and I think in a situation where we've seen public institutions collapsing, ESCOM, South African Airways, this is a good story to tell. It says to us that we do have basic foundations when it comes to higher education institutions that are in place, and therefore these institutions that need to be protected and need to be defended. And I think this is part of the reason that I wrote an effort that I wrote, because I think when you look at the report that, for instance, was released in relation to UNISA, that report is painting a picture that is not entirely realistic, because what, for instance, you have there is an institution that has been ranked number 7 in the university, is been ranked one of the top in the world as well. And that says to you that the academic program is intact. That says to you that in terms of the research output, that university is at least performing. And I think there are rooms for improvement, particularly in terms of student support, in terms of ensuring that there is enough tutorial support, there is, sound administrative and institutional governance systems in place. However, the report to suggest that all is lost is not realistic. And I think we've got to be asking ourselves questions is, why would we have a report like that? And I think this is the reason that I wrote that op-ed to say, let's have conversation about the state of education, but also the conversation about what is happening, particularly at UNISA at the present moment.
Well, let's labor a little bit on the issues around UNISA, because also at the center of this is also the allegations against the Vice-Chancellor, right? Although when it comes to deferring timelines in terms of certain implications, I mean, one such an article, for example, will say things like she spent laborious amounts of money on curtains, and the other ones will just, there are different allegations that are coming out. And whether we like it or not, unfortunately, Prof, this has a significant impact on image, right? Because more than anything else, it's not just about image of the outside world, right? It's not about image of those that are looking from the outside in. It's also those students, right? It's the students that have to go to these institutions of higher learning, associate themselves and be proud of carrying the badge, carrying the banner, because in essence, Mametlwe, these are people that are ambassadors for these institutions of higher learning. That becomes very critical to how is it that the image is portrayed. How imperative is that, and how do we turn around the strategy or turn around some of these allegations that have been put forward even against the VC?
I think you must get me very clear, right? There was, for instance, an inflation of prices at the upgrading of during the upgrading of the VC's house.
Yeah.
That report, what it failed to do is to allocate the responsibility where it rightfully belongs. It instead speaks about institutional governance failure. The reality is the VC consistently protested that, right? There are, correspondence that I shared also with your team, where as of, July, in 2021, following up in June, she consistently said there is inflation. It's ridiculous that you have, 240,000 being paid for curtains, that there was 400,000 overspending on the house. The reality is that report shielded the people that are responsible, and that is because Prof. Musia, who conducted the independent investigation, was not independent at all. He's conflicted, and he did not disclose those conflicts of interest. What we are saying is, university has been saved a lot of money in the struggle to dismantle the corruption under this new VC, right? You have university that has increased its financial reserves by over 5 billion if you take that report. And of course, about 7 billion if you take the management report, right? That we were sitting at 9 billion in terms of reserve. We are now sitting at about 16 billion since this VC took over. How was that achieved? It was achieved through a heroic and courageous struggle to dismantle corrupt networks. Lots of things have been insourced. Like, for instance, there is a laptop scheme where we now buy these laptops on open markets in shops. Every lecture is given the money. That deal alone saved university over 400 million. And I think, for me, people that are fighting corruption in these institutions need to be supported. We need to use the money that are saved from this to ensure that we invest in the academic project, we invest in improving the research. And I think, for me, this is what we need to talk about.